Hi, welcome to the CrafteeManatee. Today's video is a quick tutorial on stranded colorwork knitting. So I'm going to be showing you the basics of how I change colors and different ways that you can manage floats along the backside of your project. This tutorial does assume that you know the basics of knitting, like casting on and just knitting plain rounds, also working in the round like this. Most stranded colorwork patterns are worked in the round because you want to make sure that the design is always on one side of the fabric, as you can see, and that the ugly side, the bad side, is on the inside. So that works perfectly in the round. So you'll need to know how to knit in the round, either with the magic loop method with this cable, which is what I'm using, or double pointed needles, whichever way you prefer. All we need for today's video is two different colors of yarn. I'm using a worsted weight yarn in blue and pink, but you can use whatever weight yarn you would like in whatever two colors you want to use. I just picked these two because they are very vibrant and easy to see on camera. I'm also going to be using a 5.5 millimeter needle, or the number 9, and I also have a cable because I prefer to knit in the round using the magic loop method, but you could also use double pointed knitting needles if you prefer that way. So whatever method you want to use to knit in the round, and two different colors of yarn is all we're going to need for today's video. One thing I do want to mention about these needles is that they are a size up from what my yarn recommends. So my yarn recommends a 5 millimeter needle and I am using a 5.5. I find that with stranded color work, tension tends to run very tight, at least mine does. And so upping the size of your needle can really help add some space and get that tension back to what it would be normally. To get started, I went ahead and knit a few rounds in blue, and now I'm going to add in a second color. So I'm going to start working every other stitch in a new color. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with this blue, knitting like normal, and then I'm going to add on my next color. So I'm going to start the stitch and attach the pink yarn and complete the stitch. And now we have two working yarns that we have to pay attention to. And it can be kind of a lot to get used to in the beginning because we have all of this yarn just around us. So take a second whenever you first start working your new color to get things organized. So I like to hold both of the colors at the same time. Some people prefer to drop the color they're not working with. So if I were to work in blue, a lot of people will just drop the pink and ignore it and work in blue. And then whenever they want to switch to the pink, they would just drop the blue and pick up this pink yarn back here. And that is totally one way to do this, but I prefer to hold both of my yarns at the same time. So I control them both just like I would normally with knitting. And I'll pick up the blue, and then I will pick up the pink. So I just ignore the color that I don't want to pick up, and I pick up the one that I do. And this keeps control of both colors at all times. That way I'm not picking up colors and putting them down and getting tangles and things like that. I also think that it speeds up the process quite a bit. And as you can see, we are just continuing going back and forth. And that is all you are going to do for color work. So go ahead and continue doing this whichever way you want to be working your yarn. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend doing that for a few rounds, going every other stitch in a new color. That helps keep things very nice and controlled back here on the wrong side of our work because the floats are not too long. So if you're just starting out, this is a great way to get started. It's just going one color and then the other. And do this in whatever way feels comfortable to you. I can explain all kinds of different ways to hold yarn, but if you are a beginner, you have to figure out what works best for you and what feels the most comfortable. So play around with that, just going back and forth. I'm going to work a few rounds just like this, and then I'm going to meet you back here to talk about how to manage some longer floats. So I will be back once I've worked a few more rounds. This is what that color work will start to look like after you have a few rounds done. As you can see, it is simply just switching between colors. And to do more advanced work, you're going to typically follow along to a pattern that has different designs. But you could also simply make stripes like this or speckles where you do a row like this and then a few plain rows and it makes a speckled design. But now I want to show you what happens when we need to work say a pink and then several blue and then a pink again, because we're going to have a long float along the back and we want to make sure that those floats are staying nice and tight, just like they are in these rounds that go every other stitch, because we don't want the tension to get weird or any of these stitches to get loose once they are pulled out if there's a long float in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and work. We'll go ahead and work a pink stitch right here. So we'll change up the colors right there a little bit. And then I'm going to work 5 blue stitches. And now 5 for some people might not be enough to start managing your floats, but let me show you what happens if I just totally ignore this pink yarn. So I'm going to drop it and just work in blue for 5 stitches. And then I'll work a pink stitch again. So 4 and 5. And I'm going to pick up that pink yarn again and make a stitch. This is what is happening in the back of our work. So we have that long loop there. And now in a lot of projects, I'll be honest, I would just not bother catching the float for 5 stitches. That's just me, but it would look nicer back here and prevent these stitches from accidentally pulling too loose. So you can see that this stitch can pull out and look a little loose in the front, especially as we continue working. So I'm going to leave that how it is. And in this next section, I will show you how we can catch that float to make it less likely that those will pull out. So I'm going to work 5 blue, but instead of working all of them while ignoring that pink yarn, I'm going to work 2 blue stitches. And then I'm going to catch the float. And I do that just by taking our yarns and crossing them over each other. So we will just twist the yarn in the back and continue working with the blue. So now I'm going to work 2. And I'll go ahead and catch the float again just to show you. So we twist the yarn and I'll work that final blue and then the pink. And now you can see that those floats are caught. So where this first section, you can see we have that big loop. This section does not. So those floats are laying flat just like in these rows below them. So that's exactly what we want. Another way, if you are using the technique I showed you that is holding both yarns at the same time, I'll show you how you can catch floats that way as well. So I'll go ahead and knit 5 blue, but I'll do 2. And then to catch a float while I'm holding the yarn like this, You can see that for the first 2 stitches, I was going over the pink and grabbing that blue. For the third stitch to catch the flow, I'll go under the pink. So just like that. And then you want to make sure that you pull those to make sure that the pink did not get too caught up in there, because all we want is a little twist. So I'll do that again. Now that blue is kind of pulled to the front, I'll work 2 with it in the front. And then for this next one, I will reach over and under that pink to work the blue. And then kind of adjust it to make sure that it's laying flat and work that last stitch in pink. So that achieved the same goal as the other technique, but it can be done quite a bit faster in my experience. You kind of are just reaching over and under, and you can do that as many times as you want, and it just keeps everything nice and twisted in the back. So that is the technique that I prefer, is the holding them both at once, but this dropping the yarn and picking it back up is totally fine as well. And if you don't care too much about stitch tension, you can always just leave long floats in the back, although it is not recommended typically. But those are different ways to catch your floats in Colorwork. I hope you enjoyed today's video learning the quick basics of stranded knit Colorwork. If you did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more knit and crochet patterns and tutorials. And you can also find all of my patterns on Ravelry, Ribbler, and Etsy. Thanks for watching. Bye.